And welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope everybody is having a great and wonderful day. A great and wonderful day. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome, welcome, welcome to Daring Dialogues. I am your host, Shantae Charles. I hope that everybody is having a great and wonderful day. I want to wish you a happy Wednesday. I hope that everybody has had an opportunity to get started on their day, and I hope that everything is going well, that you are busy and productive and active in all of those necessary things. I am working on book 4, Church Love, going through all of the pieces of my book, which is the 4th in this series. Good morning. To make sure that I am closing loopholes. And just know, if you are an author and you plan to write series fiction, just understand as you close out that series that OMG, you better make sure you close all doors that need to be closed and don't have any hang-on characters unless you plan on doing a book after that, which I don't plan on doing. I may do a prequel, but after I finish this series, I'm hoping to go on to some other fiction titles in my mind that I've been working on for a couple of years and doing research around. So it takes some time, and my fans of my Church Love series are like, give us book 4, give us book 4, give us book 4. And I'm like, but I don't want to give you book 4 and then you come back and say, well, what about this character and what about that character and why didn't you finish this and what's going to happen here? So I have to actually take my time and make sure that I go through all of my characters to make sure that I have resolved the character issues that needed to be resolved. I have disappeared who needed to be disappeared, and I have maybe killed off who needed to be killed off. All right. So it does take some time when you're working on series fiction to come to that conclusion. I don't have a big team working with me. I don't have ghostwriters. I write my own storyline. So it is taking me a little bit longer than I personally expected. So I want to say to those of you all who are excited about the series and have been reading and who have been fans for years, I am trying to come to that conclusion this year and make sure I tie up all my ends before I release my final book in the series. All right, so that's what's been going on outside of all of hell coming against us in the last couple of years, which of course doesn't help when you're trying to be a creative writer. Outside of that, I really am just working through the book series itself and working through all of my characters, making sure my characters are developed, completed, and ended for the closing of the series. All right. So in case you didn't understand that about writing and the writer's mind, okay, when you have to close a series, you got to make sure everything is closed. All right. And you have to make sure you're tying up all ends. All right. So that was free. Okay. I actually would give that in a writing seminar, but I gave that to you for free this morning. All right. So we are talking today about relationships, and I want to talk to you real briefly about 2 books that we're going to move into after I think we have one more section that I want to look at in the Sacred Search. I want to say good morning to my YouTube live streamers, Mr. Williams and Lady Judy. Good morning. And I also want to say good morning to you all on my Periscope. Lady Barbara, Prophet Jonathan, Pastor Ben, Lady Evelyn, thank you all so much for tuning in and also chiming in the conversation box. YouTube gets really lit up over here, so I wish you all could see each other, but they'll come up with that technology soon. Don't you worry about it. So we've got one more finish up piece in this book, The Sacred Search. We're going to continue today with Kingdom Marriage. But we're also going to move into two books which I believe are important for this particular time and season. And one of those is by a gentleman by the name of David A. Burris. I share his information on some of the relationship groups and pages that I'm a part of through Facebook. But he also has a book called The Blueprint. All right, and it is available online. It's Relationship Lessons from the Garden of Eden. So he spends this book talking about Adam and Eve's relationship. He goes into some pieces about singleness, which I do want to cover. So we'll probably look into this book on next Wednesday. And then I saw this book. Someone was talking about it online. I went to go research it. And I was like, yes, this is a book that I want to delve into, especially for those of you who want to date. All right. And this one is called The Labor of Love. She actually did a more comprehensive research on the history of dating and some of the different nuances of it and how it has moved to the present day. And I want to get into this with us. Why do I want to get into this with us? Because I need us to understand the history of dating and probably why you're having the issues that you're having. I write a little bit about it in my ebook, which you can get online, called Bliss, Believe Love is Sacred and Special. But I also talk about the history of dating, but I also talk about courtship principles, how to set boundaries, what kind of boundaries you can set that actually work. All right. And I know they work because I've had people over the past, 10 to 14 years now, who have applied the principles, and they are now married and happily married, and some of them have children. So, and I applied the principles in my own life. So I try not to give people, when I'm writing, I try not to give people things that I myself have not tried out, applied, and seen that they have worked. All right. So you can find that online. Just look, if you type in my name and you type in Bliss, BLISS, with, it's an acronym, and you type in Bliss by Shantae Charles. Robert Charles is co-author. You will see that ebook is very inexpensive. I wanted to make it inexpensive because I didn't really want people to have an excuse as to why they couldn't get their hands on information that can help them in their process of relationship. So many times online, I see people saying, well, how do I set boundaries? What kind of boundaries should I set? How do I know that this person is a good person for me? All right. I cover that in the ebook. So that's why generally when people ask me those questions, I just give them the link to my book because I've already covered it. I've already talked about it. And that way you can read it on your own. You can go through it. You can process it. You can try out some of those boundaries in your relationship and see what a difference it will make. All right. But next week, she goes thoroughly into the history and the background of dating and the concept of dating and the details in a way that I did not go into in my ebook. So we're going to get into it on next week, because some of you, I can't convince you to not date. And so you're just going to keep going around the merry-go-round over and over and over again because, hey, some of you have said, I'm grown. Nobody can tell me anything. I can do what I want to do. And I'm going to just keep dating. And there's plenty of evidence out there that is hopefully will help you to understand that dating was never meant for the believer. All right. And so I'm going to delve into this book from the research perspective behind dating. And I like the fact that her research, it says after years of first person research on dating, she is off the market. All right. So that's next week. We're going to delve into those two. All right. Let's get back into the sacred search. And remember, in the sacred search, we were talking about couples styles, marriage styles, right? We talked about what is your style. And I'm going to go through just Real quickly, some of the ones we've already covered. All right, we talked about the spiritual soulmate style. We talked about the business buddies and the romantic idealists. We've talked about Adonis and Aphrodite, and we talked about how that can become a very unhealthy style because it's all based around physicality, how good a person looks, how good you two look together. We talked about the cookbook couple. You know, this is the couple that is interested in a lot of strategies on how to do things, okay? We talked about the passionate partnership, people who make their relationship the highest priority. They might have children, but their children don't rule their relationship, all right? We also talked about the horror show house, which is a relationship that can really be dysfunctional. It's based around crisis and creating crisis with each other constantly. We also talked about the house and home marriage. These are your home and garden, your house repair marriages, where people really enjoy getting into building the physical home. All right. And then we talked about two more. The kids are us couple. These are the people who can't wait to have children. They want to have 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 children. I know some couples like that. They both are kids are us couples, so it works for them, okay? And then you have bohemian buddies. This is a couple that enjoys traveling. They enjoy books. They enjoy the arts. They're kind of, you know, they may not have children. They may have children. I found that a lot of older people that I know that are getting married in their older age are the bohemian couple because they've already raised children. And this may be their second marriage. And so they find that they have a lot of time to get involved in the arts and activities and things of that nature. So let's talk about the last few here. We have police partners, warriors, student teacher, and take your pick. Police partners. Some people find themselves energized by a police arrangement. Either they want to have somebody they can keep checking up on, or they need somebody to keep checking up on them. If one spouse is or was an addict, the other spouse will regularly check the garbage for bottles, the internet history for sites visited, the bank statements for sudden or unexplained withdrawals. The thing is, some people feel most comfortable fulfilling the role of a traffic cop as it preoccupies their attention and keeps them from having to think about their own shortcomings. It gives them a sense of purpose, and sometimes even feeling fear and suspicion is more energizing than feeling bored or apathetic. Other people like to be policed. It absolves them from having to look after themselves. They'll keep running into trouble because their partner acts like a safety net, ready to catch them so they don't hit the ground too hard. They may act like they resent the interference, but deep down they know they need it. The problem with entering this kind of marriage is considerable. First, if you're the policeman or the policewoman, you're assuming you don't need someone to hold you accountable. If you're playing the criminal or save me role, you're indulging your laziness by refusing to love, look after, or serve someone else. That makes this relationship character corrupting, reinforcing your weaknesses rather than character forming, building up each other's strengths. When it comes to choosing a marriage partner, avoid the messianic complex. Can somebody please hashtag that? Hashtag messianic complex. There is only one Savior, and he hasn't been walking this earth for 2 millennia. Yet, by accepting a partner's excuses or joining him in blaming others, some people spur on a partner who perpetually runs his life into the ground. There can be a sense of satisfaction in thinking you're the only one who really understands her, or you're the one she desperately needs, because it can feel good to be needed. There's nothing wrong with wanting to help someone out. There is something wrong with choosing an untrustworthy, crisis-prone person to become your spouse. Before you consider such a relationship, think about something we'll touch on in more detail later. Do you really want to raise kids with someone who needs to be rescued from himself or herself? If you do marry someone like that, you're almost guaranteed to become a de facto single parent. Is that truly the kind of father or mother you want to give to your children? I recently talked with a father who said his engaged son was already exhausted with his fiance's clinical mood swings. If that boy is exhausted now in a dating relationship, how tired do you think he's going to be when they have 3 kids and he has a full-time job? You've got to think through these issues to their logical conclusion. If a relationship is wearing you down even before you're carrying a mortgage or raising children and shouldering increased responsibilities, just try to imagine how you'll cope when other life pressures have increased as well. So, what is the policing relationship all about? It's about one person thinking that they can save their partner. All right? It's about one person thinking they can handle having to police someone else's life. When we know, all right, if you're really honest about your walk with Christ, listen, I'm trying to be saved for me. All right? The scripture says what? Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. All right? So if you have to work out your salvation and your partner's salvation, you're going to be in trouble. All right? If you are looking at that person and at first you may think it's a challenge, right? This goes back to the notion that people refer to as missionary dating, where people get into relationships with people that have lots of issues and you think that you can save them. All right? But you're also in a romantic relationship with them. Chances are you're going to wind up, if you keep going in that relationship, you're going to wind up being the police partner. And you may not have signed up for that for the long term. Like he said, some people enjoy that. And if you enjoy that and you're married to someone or you marry someone who is independent and doesn't want someone policing their behavior and their actions because, you know, they feel like, hey, I'm a responsible adult, that too can cause friction in the relationship because now you're trying to be your spouse's God, okay? And you don't need to be your spouse's God. You need to be a spouse, all right? Let's look at the second one here today. Warriors. Warriors. Some people like to fight. It's what they grew up with, and it's how they process emotions. It's what keeps life from being so boring. Now, if you grew up like this, all right, I'm going to tell you, I grew up having to fight. Some fights I initiated. Most of the time I didn't initiate them. But if you grew up in a rough period, in a rough neighborhood, in the hood, like I did, sometimes you just had to fight. Not that you asked for it, but the conditions in which you were in, people were always trying you. All right? People wanted to try you. They wanted to see if you were tough, right? If you were a girl, somebody had beef with you. It was just ridiculous. I'm like, why? Why can't we just get along? All right? But it was a mindset. And what the writer is talking about here is some people don't get rid of that mindset as they get older. This is why you have, what is it? What's that website? World Star Hip Hop, right? This is why you have some of these websites of what they call ratchetness with the ratchet videos. And you have old people still fighting. You have grown women and grown men still fighting like they're children, trying to handle conflict. That's why we have this, why these sites are still popular, because you have people that fight their way through conflict and that's all they know. They don't know conflict resolution skills. They don't know how to talk something through and how to negotiate peace as opposed to using your fists. All right. And so again, if this is if this is the person you're with and the way that they process their feelings and emotions is through fighting, you may want to take a look at that. You may want to consider, do you want to get in a relationship where it's going to be consistent fighting? This is the warriors. Okay? These people may even think that makeup sex is the best kind of sex. So that means in order to have makeup sex, I have to first initiate some kind of fight, some kind of argument. All right? I got to blow up. All right? I have to get some kind of drama going so that I can make up and then I can be romantic with you. And so now my sexuality is attached to how well I can start a fight. That's going to be problematic. Okay? Fighting releases adrenaline, and adrenaline can make us feel more fully active. But it's a destructive way to stave off boredom, and it's a disastrous living arrangement in which to raise children. If you can't express what you really feel about each other without using 4-letter words and hurtful comments and your hands, you lack the basic relational skills necessary to build a satisfying marriage. And I'm going to be honest. I mean, I grew up in a neighborhood where if the couples were married and not just living together, if they were married, you could hear the arguments. All right. You could be sitting on your front porch and everybody in the neighborhood would be, oh, here they go again. And you hear them and they're cursing and they're yelling and they're shouting at each other. And you hear stuff flying and crashing because they're throwing stuff at each other. And then the house goes quiet. All right. Some people don't care how much noise they make in their neighborhood. These days, they would probably call the police on you. But again, there was one particular relationship couple like this that actually ended in the guy killing himself and shooting the woman in the stomach. And unfortunately, I saw some of the ending results of that. But people knew that this was a couple that fought all the time. But nobody was expecting it to end the way that it did. Because people thought, okay, they're at it again. They're fighting again. They're yelling, they're screaming, until we heard gunshots. And then we realized, okay, this is not just a normal fight. All right. Guy winds up dead. Wife winds up with a gunshot to the stomach. She lived. He did not. Okay. This is a dangerous kind of relationship to try to build, especially in a marriage. Either you're not ready for marriage or the person you're with isn't capable of having an intimate marriage. Fighting gets old. There will be seasons of life when you need encouragement, when you need a forgiving spouse, when you need acceptance. A marriage style defined by fighting usually lacks these essential qualities. Marriage is tough enough without being with someone who actually enjoys conflict. Let me say that again. Marriage is tough enough without being with someone who actually enjoys conflict. And of course, again, if you both enjoy conflict, the conflict can escalate to a point where it can put both of your lives in danger. Conflict is an inevitable and necessary part of every healthy, mature relationship, but I wouldn't want to be married to someone who is energized primarily by altercations. I'd rather they be energized by service, motivated by love, and moved by compassion, kindness, and God's leading. What about you? All right. Here's the next kind of relationship style. Student-teacher. Student-teacher. The name explains itself. One person likes to be taught. The other person likes to teach. The most common form is the much older, usually financially successful man marrying a considerably younger woman, or in the reverse form, what we might call today the cougar relationship. He thinks it's cute, that she is enthralled by a fancy restaurant she's never been to before, and when he explains the wine list to her in a way that makes her look at him with awe, it makes him feel like a man. Women can get an ego rush having a younger man chase after them, and for a while they may enjoy doing younger things, reliving an earlier life. But if you're talking marriage and that's the main attraction, how long can you sustain that kind of bond? Keep in mind your young man won't be so young in another decade. Due warning, students eventually grow up and want to be in a more mature relationship. Being a student is okay for a while, but eventually you want to graduate from school and build a life of relating. If the person you're married to won't let you grow up and mature, resentment is inevitable. You want to kill a sexual relationship? Sow the seeds of resentment. It works every time. These are short-term situations at best and usually don't make a healthy basis for a long-term marriage. All right? Because guess what? Marriage takes two mature people. Somebody can type that. Marriage takes two mature people. All right? Here's the next one. Take your pick. Take your pick. Jennifer likes to go out several times a week. She's a social butterfly and feels like Bono when he sings. I'll go crazy if I can't go crazy tonight. She's married to Riley, a guy who is into moving dirt. He develops property for contractors and has a propensity for working long days. 10 to 12 hours is not uncommon for him once he gets the machinery up and going. The hard labor makes him want to plop on the couch as soon as he gets home. And when Jennifer mentions a party or restaurant or friends getting together, Riley honestly feels that taking a shower and standing on his feet is the last thing he wants to do. Neither Jennifer nor Riley are right or wrong in their evening preference. Working hard is just what he does. Needing to enjoy a good party now and then is a part of Jennifer's DNA. Because they are married, they have to compromise, but in all honesty, it's a constant frustration to both of them. This is something to consider before you get married. Perhaps I've yet to describe an idealized marriage style. We're just trying to get the conversation going because there are several types of marriage styles as we've already gone through. So, will you do yourself a favor? If you're in a serious relationship, set aside at least 2, perhaps 3 dates, outings, courtship endeavors. I would actually encourage group outings with you at a place where you can talk without being disturbed. This is key. Don't go to an amusement park when you're ready to have these conversations, all right? Don't go to a place where it's the movies, all right, or entertainment. Go to a place where you know that you're going to be able to hear what the person is saying and they're going to hear what you're saying, and it's not going to be a whole lot of outside distractions. Beforehand, take the time to write out a description of what your ideal marriage style looks like. Let's review them again. All right? Do you see yourself as someone who wants to have a spiritual bond with your spouse? Some people are okay with not having a deep spiritual bond with their spouse. I don't know why they're okay with it, but they are. Okay? Do you see you and your spouse as business buddies? Do you eventually see yourself being married and in business with your spouse? Some people, when they come to the conversation, they already have that in mind, that the person that I'm married to, we're going to share like interests. We may even be in business together. All right? Are you the person who says, I want to have a spouse that is physically attractive, and I don't want to necessarily build my relationship around that, but in my eyes and in my ideal, my spouse is taking care of themselves. My spouse, you know, if I am a person that works out and keeps my body in shape and eats right, then I want a spouse that is as passionate about that as I am. Okay? Am I going to have, in my ideal relationship, am I going to have somebody who is passionate, all right, about making me priority over other stuff? Or am I going to be okay with the spouse that does not necessarily make me the priority? Do I want a peaceful home? Do I want someone who's interested in building the physical home with me? All right. So those are some of the things that you could be thinking about as you are writing down what your ideals are. Okay. So as you do this and you're having your conversation, you can be asking some questions like, or thinking about, how will you spend your evenings? So you're taking your notes. You're thinking about, what is my ideal? How am I going to be spending my evenings with my spouse? What does that look like to me? Are we going to spend our evenings on the couch every weekend watching sports? All right. Because there's some people that are doing that now and they absolutely hate it. All right. Their spouse is a sports fanatic. And now they are in that marriage. And now they're like, oh my gosh, we're going to be doing this for the rest of our life. I didn't sign up for sports every weekend. So how will you spend your evenings? That needs to be something you're thinking about. How close will the two of you be? Will you be all up under each other? Or do you want to be married to somebody who understands that you need their space and that they're okay with it and that they have other activities and things that they're involved in so they don't feel so clingy to you? All right. Will you try to spend every hour outside of work together? Or will you sometimes pursue separate hobbies? How central will church involvement or ministry involvement be in your life? Now, here's the thing. If you're in a conversation with someone and they say to you, church is my life, if you're in a conversation with someone who says to you, church is my life, and you know church is not your life, please have that conversation. All right? Don't marry somebody who tells you church is their life. Thank you, lady. Thank you. Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you. Believe it. All right? I'm a pastor. And I'm going to tell you, church is not my life. All right? Hello? Okay. Y'all think I'm playing. All right? You need to have a conversation with them. When somebody starts telling you church is their life, you better have a serious conversation as to what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Because when you want to do spousal things that do not involve church events, it may just be a problem. All right? If all of your family events and family vacations and all of your events as a couple begin and end with church, church is their life. All right? I'm not knocking church events. I've been to plenty of them. Some of them are awesome and fantastic. But at the same time, you also as a couple need to have events and activities that do not involve church people. All right? Balance. Thank you, Lady Barbara. All right? So how central will church involvement be in their life? Will you take vacations with your children, without children? Will you take individual vacations? Will you take couples vacations where you go with other couples? Will you take church vacations where you go on a cruise with your church? All right? What do your vacations look like? What is your idea of a vacation? Because for some people, an idea of a vacation is a staycation, where they stay at home, they don't go anywhere, they eat as much food as they want to eat, they binge on movies, and they don't go anywhere. To some people, that's a vacation. To other people, they've got a plan 6 months to a year in advance. They get plane tickets, they go to Caribbean island, or they take a cruise. So you want to have in your mind, what does a vacation look like? What does a short-term vacation look like? What does a long-term vacation look like? All right? When you've daydreamed about the most satisfying moments of marriage, are you and your loved one walking on a beach? Are you walking through antique stores looking for antiques? Are you working on a mission field? Are you taking your children to the park? Are you doing something else? What does your dream of a marriage and family look like? Write it down. All right? So as you're thinking about these questions and you're thinking about these things, it becomes easier to pinpoint who is not it. All right? They may be a good person. They may be a great person. They may be a wonderful person in spirit, but they can still not be it. All right? And there's nothing wrong with you saying to that person, you're a great person, you have a great personality, I enjoy hanging out with you, but your ideal and my ideal are not the same. All right? And unfortunately, too many times when people are in the courtship process or they're dating, they don't stop to actually communicate what their ideals are. And then they get deeper and deeper into the relationship. And then they decide, or they start fearing, well, what will happen if I let go? All right? What will happen? I can't see down the road if I'm going to get into another relationship in the future. So sometimes we stay in relationships for the wrong reasons. Sometimes we stay in them for a sense of security, even though they don't meet any of our criteria for a long-term relationship. Don't raise your hand if you're doing that, okay? Don't put any hearts up. If you're in a relationship and you're only there because it's convenient and it makes you feel safe. All right? I'm just telling you, evaluate, does this person match what I see for my future? And if they don't, at some point you have to be honest enough with that person to say, look, I know we've been in this relationship for a very long time, but when I think about my future and I think about what I see in my future, I recognize and I realize that I would be wasting your time if I continue in this relationship, knowing that it's not what I see for my future. All right? Labels aren't nearly as important as how well your assumptions about married life match up with those of the person you're thinking about marrying. How important is any one particular snapshot to you? It is mildly interesting. Is it mildly interesting, very desirable, or absolutely essential? If it's the latter and you're thinking about marrying someone who is antagonistic to that activity or style, don't try to make yourself fit into each other's lives. We find our fulfillment in God alone. There are other people out there. Have the courage to move on and be who God made you to be. Yes, breaking up a relationship can be hard and even excruciating. Breaking an engagement and calling off a wedding can be even harder. No one wants to do that, especially to someone they feel very deeply for. But going ahead with a wedding just because calling it off would be hurtful is one of the most foolish things a person can do. You are accepting a life sentence because you don't want to endure a difficult season. Think about that. Life sentence with somebody you already know you're not compatible with, or a difficult season and breaking that off before you get into a life sentence with someone that you know is going to be a conflict the entire time that you're married. After your 2 or 3 personal dates, get together with at least 2 other couples. Talk about marital styles. All right? Get together for a group discussion. Excuse me. The reason this is so important is that because sometimes men and women are more likely to be honest when they see others sharing their views. The guy might be shy telling his girlfriend, yeah, I'm not so into the handyman thing. But when another guy says it and he laughs along and says, you got that right, a little moment of truth can come out in a group setting and a group conversation. When a woman says, you know, I don't really know if I want to have children, your girlfriend's facial expression in response will tell you a lot about what she really feels. You might think that we're being obsessive about this, but trust, this is a big deal that few couples only truly consider. It's worth setting aside 3 or 4 evenings, all right, to have these kinds of discussions. Remember, your goal is to build a life together. If 2 builders are trying to build 2 different houses on the same foundation, that building is going to collapse. If your dreams and your partner's dreams do not fit together in an area that won't change, with an issue that really doesn't matter to you, admit it. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with each other. What do you envision your marriage looking like? Will you ever be able to have it with your current partner? If not, take the courageous step of ending the relationship and giving God a chance of leading you towards someone who might be a better fit. In the end, it's the most loving thing you can do. Remember, if there's not one right choice, there is likely a more compatible person out there with whom you can share your life in a more fruitful and satisfying manner. As painful as breaking off an engagement may be, it is nowhere near as painful as breaking up a marriage or living in a miserable one. All right? So, I want you to think about that. And we're going to conclude with reading from the Sacred Search. We actually covered quite a bit from this book, but I encourage you, if you are single, if you are courting, if you're in a serious relationship, I encourage you to get this book. Another one, because we've already gone through this book, I think season 1 or season 2, I don't recall which season. This is another one. Ladies, Getting Serious About Getting Married by Debbie Macon. All right. A lot of the conversations that I hear, especially with African American women, about men and manhood and how it's hard to find a man and all of this good stuff, she addresses it. All right. This is an excellent book, and it talks about the notion of singleness and how we talk about singleness, especially how we talk about it with African American women. And she makes very good and very valid points. All right. So if you didn't catch us reading this, I encourage you to get your own copy. All right. She actually breaks down what singleness is, and she breaks down what singleness is not. And this book needs to be pretty much, to me, in the hands of every African American single woman. I often hear the term celibacy bandied about still by the believing church. All right. And we've talked about that before. If you're not in a relationship, you are not practicing celibacy. Let me say that one more time. If you're not currently in a relationship, you are not practicing celibacy. You're practicing abstinence. They are not the same thing. All right? Celibacy is the gift of permanent singleness. All right? So if you're planning to be married in the future, you're not practicing celibacy, you're practicing abstinence. So please make sure you change your vocabulary around that, because in this case, I believe you will have what you say. You keep saying you're practicing celibacy, you really will be practicing celibacy. All right? There are some people that I do know that are practicing celibacy. They don't plan on ever being married. So they are using the term correctly. They don't plan on being married. They don't plan on having a boo on the side. They don't plan on having sex outside of marriage. They don't plan on any of that. They have dedicated their lives to serve the Lord without marriage ever. They are practicing celibacy. Everybody else who has the goal of being married one day, you're practicing abstinence. All right? So, last 15 minutes here, let's get into chapter 7 of Kingdom Marriage by Dr. Tony Evans. If you've been checking out his work, you know that Dr. Tony Evans has an entire kingdom series. He has a book, Kingdom Man, Kingdom Woman, Kingdom Children, Kingdom Family, Kingdom Marriage, Kingdom Disciple. Yeah, so it's all about the kingdom with him. Chapter 7, and we're just going to begin it today, and we're talking about resolutions. Resolutions. A husband once shared with a friend his secret to making his marriage last. We go to a nice restaurant once a week and enjoy a good meal and some relaxing music. To which his friend replied, "Wow, that does sound nice." "It is," the husband responded. "She goes on Tuesdays and I go on Fridays." Another man shared that the secret to his marriage is that he and his wife agreed to never go to bed angry at each other. It sounded like a good plan. However, as a result, they haven't slept together in years. Although the marriage relationship is one of the most rewarding relationships we can enjoy, it can also be one of the most challenging. No other relationship requires such an intense and ongoing level of mutual exchange and sharing of resources, emotions, communication, patience, passion, and more. Simply by its design, the marriage partnership sets itself up to be one of the most testing, trying, or even exhausting engagements in life. It's no wonder so many couples end up divorced, and so many who do stay married do so out of obligation rather than desire or love. What I want to encourage you to consider in this chapter is the value of the sanctifying effect of marriage. Somebody can hashtag sanctifying effect. As Gary Thomas writes, all right? As Gary Thomas writes, what if God designed marriage to make us holy more than to make us happy? He actually has a book that I have that came out before this called The Sacred Marriage, which is a book that I encourage people, especially once you get engaged, to read that book. All right? So he talks about this notion that when we make seeking and serving God our highest calling, as it should be, then anything that equips or enables us to do this better should be embraced. God will often use the things and people closest to us to do the greatest work in our hearts, our minds, and our souls. And one thing that I can guarantee that marriage will do is marriage will sharpen you. A godly marriage will sharpen you. It will cause you to evaluate yourself. It will cause you to evaluate your soul. It will cause you to be accountable to someone but outside of yourself. All right? And so I hear a lot of single people who say they want to be married, but at the same time they don't want to answer to anybody. All right? They don't want to answer to anyone. They don't want anyone to tell them anything. They don't want to be taught. and I'm trying to help some of you. You're gonna learn stuff from your spouse in marriage. You're gonna have to communicate with your spouse in marriage. You have an obligation to be accountable to your spouse in marriage. All right? And if you're going into a marriage thinking that you don't have to do any of that, you're going to find yourself at divorce court sooner than you think. All right? So, what we need to remember in these situations of conflict is that God always has a purpose for pain when we commit that pain to him and his will. Your spouse is not your enemy, but rather is a tool God sometimes allows to soften your edges, strengthen your weak spots, and deepen the authenticity of both your faith and your love. A man I had been counseling came up to me at church one day after service and said, "Pastor, my wife is killing me." I smiled, put my hand on his shoulder and said, "You did tell me you wanted to be more like Jesus, didn't you? In all of our lives, we must die to ourselves, our flesh or sinful nature, in order for the fullness of God's Holy Spirit to dwell within us and manifest his fruit. Unfortunately, for most marriages, this union can provide some of the greatest opportunities for this death to occur. If you are one of the few husbands or wives who have a rosy extended honeymoon, then maybe this chapter isn't for you. But after decades of counseling couples whose marriages appeared to be rosy on the outside, but weren't under the surface, I have a hunch that this chapter applies to more of us than we would like to admit. With marriage comes conflict, whether it's competing values, preferences, desires, traits, or even control. Whatever causes conflict in your marriage, if you and your spouse will learn how to view it through the lens of love, you can grow from it rather than allowing it to destroy you. The purpose of the thorn. One of the best passages on having a kingdom-based view of hardship or conflict is found in the Apostle Paul's second letter to the church at Corinth. It's a familiar passage to most believers who attend church regularly, but rarely is it applied directly to marriage. It reads, thank you, sanctifying effect. 2 Corinthians 12, verse 7. Because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, for this reason, to keep me from exalting myself, there was given me a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me, to keep me from exalting myself. Before we dig deeper, I want to caution you not to view your spouse as a messenger of Satan. Lord, if you viewing your spouse as a messenger of Satan, I'm going to pray for you. They shouldn't be a messenger of Satan. All right? Or a thorn in the flesh. Your spouse is a gift God has given you to better enable you to carry out your divine destiny in life. We need to be careful to make that distinction before diving into this passage. However, God can and often does use people, even the devil, to develop our spiritual maturity and character. The Greek word here for thorn in the passage refers to something that causes irritation. All right? It's like a splinter shaved off a piece of wood that gets caught under your skin. It involves anything that causes ongoing exasperation, ongoing frustration, ongoing irritation. But remember, the person is not the thorn. He or she is simply the vehicle through which God allows the thorn to come. The thorn could refer to that thing your spouse does or does not do that always invokes your sigh or your grunt or your rolled eyes, or a difference in perspective that the two of you have never been able to resolve. It could be any number of things. The Bible never tells us what Paul's specific thorn was that the Lord caused him to experience. Some say it was poor eyesight, while others speculate that it simply may have been loneliness. But since the term messenger is used, it is highly possible that the thorn was a person being used by the devil to irritate him. Whatever the cause, the principle remains the same. A thorn is something God gives or allows that causes pain or weariness for an intended spiritual purpose. Some of us deal with emotional thorns in our marriages. These are things that have to do with our feelings. It could be loneliness. In fact, some of the loneliest people I know are married couples. This is because the relationship lacks authentic connection or friendship, which leaves the couple feeling isolated. They may be together, but they feel alone. Some other emotional thorns could be depression or regret or pain, and a common thorn in marriages is bitterness. Some couples deal more with relational thorns. This is when the personalities don't click, the quirks or the bents or the preferences of their mates simply annoy them. While there are no biblical grounds for divorce, neither is any attraction, affection, or appreciation evident in the marriages. These couples often feel stuck spiritually, unhappy because their needs are not being met, but also feeling unable to do anything substantial to change that reality. I've seen marriages battered down by financial thorns as well. Despite two incomes, couples find it difficult to make ends meet. Rarely do they experience the freedom to enjoy the fruits of their labor. Or perhaps due to financial difficulty, they are stuck in unhappy work situations because they have to continue in those situations to be able to pay their financial debts. That then overflows into their marital relationships and homes. And just when it looks as though they might be climbing out of the pit of debt, some other expense arises that keeps them there. They just can't seem to shake the financial storms. And then there are physical thorns. These are health issues such as chronic illnesses, headaches that won't go away, disability, low energy, cancer, or any number of other ailments. Marriages do not look promising when plagued by health issues. Statistics say that over 75% of struggling marriages end in divorce when one partner has a chronic illness. Let's just say law there. 75% over illness. Not over whether the person loves you or not. Not over finance. Illness. All right? Those aren't very good odds at all. The stress of health-related problems frequently takes its toll on couples. One gentleman who had nursed his wife with multiple sclerosis for more than 2 decades told me that they used to attend MS conferences once a year, but they stopped going because they were saddened to see so many spouses whose mates had abandoned them when they came down with the chronic disease. They said they rarely saw married couples attend. Most of their partners had left them. Now that is a hot mess. Perhaps this is why people have taken things out of their marital vows like for richer or poor. Anybody remember those marital vows? It's been so long ago. But you hardly ever hear people actually quote the traditional marital vow. For richer or poor, right? For better or worse, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. People are writing some elaborate verses. They're writing elaborate vows. But did you put the core in there? All right? What are you vowing at the altar? Thorns come in all shapes and sizes, yet regardless of their magnitude or sharpness, a thorn always hurts. If you've ever walked in a Texas yard barefoot, you know what I mean. You can barely see the tiny barbs on the end of the thistles growing in the grass, but they hurt bad enough to stop you right in your tracks. No one likes a thorn, no matter how big or small. So the first principle to start applying in our marriage is to admit that marriage comes with thorns simply because both husband and wives are human. Marriage comes with a measure of pain. To ignore that reality or to dismiss it will only make the wounds fester and grow rather than accomplish what they were designed to do, which is to mature us into the likeness of Christ. This has been another Daring Dialogues, and I have been your host today. I hope that I have said something that will cause you to think about your relationships, that will cause you to think about the holy and sacred institution of marriage, that will cause you to think, if you're in a dating relationship or in a courtship, that you will seriously think about the person that you're involved with. Do you have an ideal? Are you looking at the relationship you're in? Are you taking a true look at the person and asking yourself, are they somebody that I can live with? As Tony Evans says, if I'm going to commit to a life sentence with them, all right, that life doesn't have to be a life of pain and hardship, all right? Doesn't have to be a constant pain or hardship. But I do need to be realistic to understand that there may be some hardships that we may go through. There may be some days of the poor. There may be some days of illness. There may be some days of not feeling, okay, the heavenliness of the union. Can I look at that person and say, you know what? I'm willing, I'm committed to faithfulness to this person, regardless of the situation and regardless of the circumstances. We have a generation that has been taught a measure, to me, of faithlessness, a measure of I want it now, a measure of it. I only engage in it if it feels good to me, the me generation. All right. And in a marriage, you have to recognize that a marriage is more than about you and making you feel good. It's about service. All right. It's about serving the person that you say that you love and that you're committed to. So you have to be honest with yourself about your feelings. What do you believe about marriage? What do you think about marriage? And then make sure you're communicating that with the person that you're involved in. I want to thank you for your time and attention today. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So please go out today and be light. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Take care and God bless. And I want to thank you, my YouTube live streamers. Thank you for your time and attention as well. Take care and God bless.